Put the whoosy on the whatsy. Attach the whatsy to the whoosy. Connect the thingamajig to the thingamabob. And that'll make the whatchamacallit.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We've got another episode. This is the drum tuning and dressing for recording episode. People have asked about it. Finally doing it. So here we go. This one, this episode is going to be inescapably how I've been doing things here in Topanga. I'll probably at some point do another episode that covers the sort of barefoot kind of thing, which relates more to probably the version of this that people might be more interested in. Basically, you know, the approach that was taken for like the Third Eye Blind record, Good Charlotte record, Taking Back Sunday, All American Rejects, all of that stuff. It's a much more extravagant setup. There's lots of microphones and stuff going on. Here in Topanga, I'm doing a very, very minimalistic kind of thing. So this, you know, we're going to tune up and mic up a drum set with 2 microphones, I think, and, you know, see how all of that comes together. So there's a lot of stuff that, you know, as far as the tuning and dressing, that will definitely apply to both. So that part of it will be the same. It's really just sort of the miking and stuff that would be different with the barefoot thing. But so this was cool because it's one of the things I love about doing this YouTube stuff is that it really forces me to like really figure out and quantify some of the things that are being done, and not just have this sort of nebulous, wishy-washy, I just kind of turn things until it sounds good to me. You know, that doesn't really help anybody. And I would rather actually really know what the hell I'm doing with some of this stuff in a more sort of predictable, quantifiable way. And preparing for this episode really forced me to do that. And it was cool. It was some very interesting results there. So we'll go through all of that. I'm just going to take one of the drums, start with the heads completely off the drum, and put them on, show how I like to actually put the heads on, get them seated properly, tune the thing up. This whole thing that I've really sort of figured out in the process of preparing for this. You know, I'd done this before, but I never really committed to it, and now I've really committed to it. Like the relationship between the top head, the bottom head, how you tune those, what the ultimate open tone is on the drum, and how all that works. Got it to a place where I'm like, this makes sense. This is how I'm going to do it all the time now. So we'll go through all that. We'll do a quick little, you know, I'll show a simple 2 miking drum thing, you know, 2 microphone drum setup, and then I want to play something. We'll record something so we can hear the drums in the context of a song that's in a particular key, because that's kind of important for how I approach things. So we'll do that, and we'll be able to check all that out. So that's gonna happen. We're doing it. And then the other thing, there's just a couple things that have come up in the last episode, you know, things that people asked about. My brain's a little fried right now. I'm switching everything over to OBS to do these episodes. I think it's gonna save me a massive amount of time. I really won't have to edit and choose when I'm looking at the Pro Tools screen and do all that after the fact. I'm gonna do it in real time. You know, while I'm actually filming, and I'll just be switching with hotkeys between whatever it is that, you know, we should be looking at. And it's going to save me a ton of time editing. That's good news. But it took a while to figure out how to get it all to work in here properly. I learned how to use OBS because of this Twilight Hour thing that Grace has been doing every Monday night. We're putting on basically a live show from our living room. And so we're, you know, I have a little 3-piece band, and we mic it all up with all the different possibilities of whatever Grace might want to play in the moment, and with cameras and stuff. It's been quite a journey figuring that out as well. Some people asked about, because I briefly mentioned getting a trim-off system. I want to do an episode about that. I'm going to wait. I want to connect with them and just get on the latest version of software and make sure I really, that thing it's complicated. It's super deep. You can do a more sort of, assisted version of that figures everything out for you. It's great. But I want to make sure I really know what I'm talking about before I actually put myself on the internet talking about it. So I'm gonna try and educate myself a little bit. The quick answer is, it sounds incredible. I thought my speakers were as good as they could possibly get. Man, I put that thing on here. It's a revelation. It's so good. That's the amazing thing about it. Here's the challenging part about it. There's a pretty significant amount of latency in it. And so to do all of that processing. So it's, in my little home setup here, it's not really a problem. When I'm tracking, I pretty much always have headphones on that don't go through the trim-off. So I'm hearing everything in real time. But if I want to track with my speakers on, I'm hearing everything late. And so you can hear it immediately when I play it back. It's like, that all sounds late to what what I actually played. They have an easy bypass button where you can bypass it, but that means when you're tracking, you're not actually hearing its processing, but it does take away the latency. So that's the only thing about it that's you have to navigate. It's not impossible. I think at Barefoot in a big commercial studio where people are in there, I don't think you could expect people to want to have to deal with that. But here in my home setup, it's incredible. It really, really is totally magical when you put it on there. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. So here we go. Let's do it. I'm gonna jump over to another camera. It'll be super easy now because I can just do it with this awesome OBS setup that I'm using now. And we'll start with the drum, no heads on it, and dive in and do it. Here we go. Okay, so here we are. This is the rack tom. It's a 13-inch rack tom from my Sugar Percussion kit. These beautiful wood shell drums. This is the drum kit that I did with Jeff Schallenberger over there at Sugar Percussion. That based on prime numbers, so it's 13-inch diameter here by 7 inches tall, both prime numbers. There's a whole video about that. I'm not going to go into all that now. You can check it out. It's on the Sugar Percussion website, the nerdy drum concept there. We're going to get into tuning. So we're going to throw heads on this thing. With this drum, I don't put anything inside the drum. You'll see in the floor tom I do a little something there, but this guy, it's just left wide open on the inside, and just slap the heads on. So we'll start with the bottom head that I have here, and really I'll start putting just putting all the lugs in. I don't use a drill typically to put all the lugs in really fast. I don't like it because it can go too fast and everything can sort of get cockeyed. The thing that's really important when you're first putting the head on is to make sure that it is really seated uniformly on the shell, and that it's not pulled one way or the other, because if it does that, it can be really difficult to get the head in tune with itself. So I just take my time and get everything sort of finger tight first, and make sure it's really seated properly on the shell first before I really start trying to tune it, and don't start locking in some sort of weird skew of how it's sitting on the shell. So this may take a second. We're probably going to have to do some time-lapse speed up on this footage so people don't get bored. Okay. So now I'm just going finger tight here. And, recording and tuning and setting up drum sounds could possibly be one of my favorite things in the universe to do, for sure. I remember growing up, I grew up playing drums, started very young, and when I first started getting into recording, I remember there was a moment, it's like, you know, I had a little Tascam 4-track cassette recorder, and I remember thinking to myself, you know, if I ever have a real studio, I'm always going to have a drum set mic'd up all the time, just ready to record anytime. I can just sit down and just record drums anytime. And well, that didn't quite happen, but maybe I should do that. Okay, so the head's on here. Everything is just kind of finger tight. And from here, just to make sure that it gets seated properly, what I like to do is put a little tension in the center of the head. So I just put my finger right in the center of the head and then just start doing quarter turns with opposite lugs. So I'll just jump back and forth. Like if we do everything on this side, it can get twisted. And putting a little pressure in the center makes sure that there's not going to be a bunch of slack that gets stuck as you're trying to bring the rim down. It'll, you know, you'll have less issues with the head going flat as you play it, because there isn't like slack stuck in there, you know, as you're tightening things down. So just, you know, put my finger in there, just keep going, just start getting it kind of in the ballpark here. Okay, so, and then put some pressure on there, get all the slack out of there so it's not constantly going flat. You can hear already, just from pressing on it, it went flat a lot. And so you got to do multiple rounds of that. Now, it's already pretty even, but as I'm bringing it up, I start trying to even out the lugs. So when you finally get to the pitch where you want to be, the lugs aren't all different, you know, and the head is in tune with itself. And so I just go for the ones that are flat. And so, as you're going, you'll actually be helping get the head more in tune with itself. This one's a little under. Okay, so let's see how much it stretches again. Push on it. Not too bad. Okay, so then top head. Here we go. Same kind of thing. So let's see. I want to make sure I got this thing. You know, this is my OCD stuff here. I like to have the badge on the head lined up with the badge on the drum. Everything looks nice. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, there we go. And so this, the heads on this drum are a coated ambassador on the top. I've always preferred coated heads on toms, really pretty much on everything. I don't think I use an uncoated head anywhere. The coating for me brings out really cool overtones and adds this sort of airy quality to the drum that I really like. And then, of course, if you do happen to play with brushes at all, then it works. Uncoated heads don't sound very good with brushes. And I've been doing a little more of that lately with this this live show thing, because we're all playing in a room together, no headphones, and it is just a study in how quiet you can play the drums. It's really quite difficult. I mean, I'm trying to play the drums as softly as I possibly can, not even letting the weight of the stick fully engage the drum. So I'm really sort of like holding back the weight of the stick so I don't play too hard. And trying to do that while you're actually trying to feel what you're playing is not easy. It was taking a little bit of a learning curve, because when, growing up playing drums in rock bands, the idea was to come off the top rope for every snare hit, and it's a completely different experience. Okay, so we're getting finger tight here. And it'll be the same kind of thing. So once everybody feels about the same finger tight, get any slack out of there. And then finger in the middle, so to speak. Opposite lugs. Okay, let's see how we're doing. Okay. A little flat there. Okay, cool. So now we're going to get into actually tuning this to a pitch. So I'm going to switch back over here. This is where the whole tuning to the key of a song comes in. And so, I like to do this because the whole thing just feels more musical to me when all of the overtones of the drums are just sort of resonating in key with the song. It's not, a glaringly obvious difference. There's something about it that just everything just kind of like feels more comfortable together. And I usually go for ones and fourths and fifths. Sometimes I think for this is a minor key, so I'm going to have a seventh, a dominant seventh in there. The thing that I'm doing is going to be in a D minor key, and so it's kind of cool to have the toms not playing the roots, because they're playing sort of, they're playing fills, and it's cool to have them do a little melody that takes you to the root note and not have the root notes being played by the toms. And so in this case, I'm going to have the toms on a C for the rack tom and an F for the floor tom. And then the snare drum, we'll get into that a little bit, but that's tuned to notes that are more like ones, fours, and fives. So this is where I had the opportunity to really pin down what's going on with this, and it was very cool to finally actually get more of a handle on it. I'm going to pull this this little chart up here. Okay. Let me see if I can switch to this. Ooh, look at that. Okay, there's my screen, and there I am hanging out in the little corner down here somewhere. Yeah, down there. Okay. So this was the stuff that I experimented with and really settled on this tuning for toms. And the thing that was really interesting is I was expecting it to be more unique for each tom, because like the, you know, the relationship between the depth and the diameter of the rack tom is totally different than the relationship for the floor tom that I'm using. The diameter and depth on that, totally different. And so I was really expecting it to be completely different between the two. And it turned out that it wasn't. That what seems to be more important is the interaction between the top and the bottom heads. And that's really what is defining the intervals between the pitch of the bottom head, the pitch of the top head, and then the pitch of the drum when it's played open. And so you can see what I have here. Let's see if I can switch. Okay, yeah. So here's the 13 by 7 sugar rack tom. And this one, I'm going to try and have it end up being a C, you know, like I had mentioned. And so to have the open tone of the drum be a C, what you have to do, or what I'm doing, is the top head I tune to a G, you know, so that's just a fifth above. And then the bottom head I tune an octave above. And so you got C, G, C, and it's amazing. It really works. So when I tune this top head to a G, bottom head to a C, take your hands off the drum, play it, you'll hear a C an octave below this bottom head. And then it turned out it was the same thing for the floor tom. So I'm not going to go through the whole tuning process on that. We'll just do it, demonstrate it on this one drum. The same thing applies to this one, to the floor tom. But, you know, it ended up being the same thing. So, you know, if I want the floor tom to be an F when it's played open, I tune the top head to a C, a fifth above, and then the bottom head an octave above, an F, another F above that. And it's cool. The drum, you know, the overtones are more harmonious within the drum itself. You know, and I tried all these different relationships. You can see, you know, what if I do, you know, if I'm going for an E, you know, if I tune a fourth above and then an octave above, how does that go? And what if I do a D and, you know, have a fifth above, and then the highest note looks like it was a major 7 on this one, and I tried this dominant 7. I tried all these different, you know, relationships to see what would happen, and this one really did sound the best for me. And you know, I've been doing a version of this, essentially, you know, tune the bottom head higher than the top head. It feels better to play, and I would just, you know, fuss with them a little bit until I got the open pitch where I wanted it. But now it's really easy, you know. I just have a reference tone that I can listen to, have in the room, and make sure I'm staying on target when I'm tuning this thing. And tune the heads where I want them, take your hands off, boom, you're right there. So we'll go through that process. We can check it out. And so one thing I just has to be acknowledged here is that drum tuning is not what I would call a very precise activity. Like, there's so many crazy overtones coming off of the drums that it's really not, this exacting process where you're exactly this pitch, you're exactly that pitch, and then you get this exact, fundamental tone when the drum is played open. So this is, we're going for close here. And ultimately, when you hear it in the track, there's sometimes the microphones will pick up a particular overtone or whatever. You also have to be aware that, if you're trying to go for a lower pitch and you hit the drum hard, the pitch will be sharp when the drum is first hit, and then go down in pitch as it decays off. And so you kind of have to find, a sweet spot of just where ultimately it sounds in tune with the song, with that arcing pitch in there. So this is not an exact science, tuning drums. This helps a lot, and it's going to save me time, and I'm very happy about this. But you'll hear as we go, it's not an exact science here. So okay, So one of the things that I do is, I'm just going to have this little synthesizer guy. And it will hold out a pitch that I can have in the room while I'm tuning the drum. So let's look at what we're doing here. What was the first thing? I already forgot. This is a disaster. Okay, so we're going to do this, and so we're going to do the top head to a G, bottom head to a C. So let's start there. Let's get our G going. All right, we ended up almost exactly there just by sheer dumb luck. But let's refine it a little bit. It's a tiny bit flat. And I want to be a little careful to not go. If I go dead on the note, when I start playing it, it might go sharp. Okay, but that's close. That's nice. So that's my G. And let's see. So if we look at this. Yeah, so there's my G for the top head. So now we're going to do the bottom head. Okay, definitely flat there. We missed the mark on this one. So here, let me get it so you can see what I'm doing. That's way flat. Oop, went a little too far. This guy's a little sharp. I'm gonna, because this head just got put back on, yeah, it went all crazy. And by the way, so the bottom head is obviously clear, and this is a diplomat, and the top head is a coated ambassador. And I've been playing, like I mentioned, a lot more softly for some of the stuff that I've been doing recently. And so that's my general rule of thumb. If I'm recording something where somebody's playing softer and you need the heads to be more responsive when you're playing softer, thinner heads are better. So like a single ply ambassador on top and a thinner diplomat on the bottom. If you have somebody that's just beating the crap out of the drums like a Dave Grohl or Mark from Taking Back Sunday, definitely go 2-ply on the batter side. I'll use an Emperor on the batter side and an Ambassador on the bottom. So there's just more mass to handle the impact of somebody really, really playing hard. I'm going to be playing a little harder tonight, just because I'm kind of dying to. But not crazy hard, and these heads will still work fine for that. But that's what's on this drum is coated ambassador on top, diplomat on the bottom. So where's our, let's see, there's our C. There's our G. Now check this out. There's our lower C. And it's a nice sounding tom. You can hear that fifth resonating in there. It's a powerful sound. So here it is again. Top head. bottom head. It is going a little sharp when I play it hard. But there's the low C in there. So then you get the same thing with the floor tom. We'll see how this guy's doing, because I've been banging on it a little bit. Let's see if you can see this guy. Okay. So let's look at, I'm gonna look at my little chart again here. So on this guy, I'm going for an F on this. It plays kind of a cool melody when you're doing drum fills in the context of this D minor-y riffy thing that I'm gonna do. So it's an F, C for the top head, and a high F for the bottom head. So let's see what happens here. It's close. It looks like it sounds like it's gone a little bit flat, but that actually might be good. Because when I start hitting it, it's going to go sharp. This again, coated ambassador on the top. Okay. Okay. So there's my F for the bottom head. And here's another thing I wanted to show that is important to me. This is something I started doing with floor toms a long time ago, and I just always do it. I always put this thing in here. Floor toms, because of the size of the drum, there's like standing waves inside the drum. You get this one particular overtone that really gets reinforced because it's the same distance in every direction because it's a cylinder. Cylinders are not great for audio, I have to say. And they're great for resonating a particular frequency, but that's why they make, you know, pipe organs out of pipes. The thing that drives me crazy with floor toms, if you have a really polished surface on the inside, you get this really weird sort of bouncing basketball sound in your floor tom, and it makes me insane. I want this solid, deep, just thud from the drum, and I don't want this high pinging basketball sound on my damn floor tom. And so what I do, let me see if you can see this. Yeah, you can totally see that. It's just a paper towel that I hang inside there, and all it has to do is basically cover half of the circumference of the drum. Once you do that, you'll eliminate those really high-pitched standing waves in there. So I don't know if anybody else has noticed that, this basketball boingy sound on your floor tom. It's the worst. It drives me nuts. That will fix it. That'll make it go away. So I got that in there. Let's hear our pitch again. This could be cleaned up a little bit. Yeah, there's a flat one there. This one's kind of sharp. Let's see if we can just get this better overall. Anytime you loosen a lug, got to put pressure on it to release that tension and actually hear the difference. It's kind of like tuning a guitar. Anytime you tune down a string on a guitar, you got to tug on it a little bit just to have that tension get released. Okay, that seems pretty good. Okay, so then our top head. There's our C. Now, let's hear the pitch of the drum. What we got? There's our F. Sounds good. Nice sounding drum. So here's another trick. Turn off this note. This was more recent, and I wish I'd figured this out earlier. For the thing that I'm doing today, I want the drums to really sound open. I don't want to have to like put a bunch of moon gel and tape and paper towels and crap all over the drums. I want them to sound big and open and lively for the thing that I'm going to record tonight. And one of the issues that I've run into at times is having a really long sustain on your floor tom can really cause problems. If you're riding on the drum, like in a drum part that you're playing, it just turns into this drone. And I want to hear punchy individual impacts from the drum. And there's a really cool way to do that without having to put a bunch of tape and stuff all over the drum. And the trick is you take a sandbag and hang it on one of the legs of the drum. And the mass of the sandbag ends up absorbing a bunch of the resonant energy in the drum, and it just shortens the decay. So check this out. Shut up, snare drum. Long decay on that thing. Put a sandbag on there. Gets a little shorter. Let's put another one on there. So there you can really hear the difference. You get the initial impact without that big long decay. It's a really cool trick for just shortening the length of the low resonant tone of the drum. There's with it. Yeah. There's without it. So there you go. Floor tom. So now I got my C and my F. So we'll get back into those in a second. Now it's snare drum time. My old trusty Pearl export snare. Love this thing. And so what I ended up figuring out with this guy was, let me take this off for a second. And I actually sort of pinned this down today because this was a similar thing where I would just kind of mess with it until I got something that I thought sounded good and was, resonating in key with what I was doing. And so I took the time to like figure out, okay, what pitches actually really work and give me a reliable result. And so where I ended up, I will pull up the little chart here. So here's my Pearl export. It's a 6 inches deep, 14 diameter. And so I'm going for a G on this song. It's a fourth in the key that we're doing. And so what I ended up doing was tuning the top head to a D, which is, the key of the song, and the bottom head a fifth above that. And then I got an open pitch of a G. I've been banging on this thing a little bit, so we'll see if we're actually still there. Let's see if it's still doing that. Okay, so top head goes to, okay, let's go here. Top head goes to, make sure I'm remembering this right. Goes to a D and an A. Okay. So It's a tiny bit under, but you can hear that that's, you know, basically yeah, this guy's a little low here. This drum is so funny, man, that the lugs are so stiff on it. They're all kind of rusted, and people has just been banging on this thing and sweating all over it. And it's kind of great. I don't need to use lug locks or anything. Once you get this thing in tune, it doesn't move, but you really have to, there's a lot of resistance when you're trying to tune it. So this come up a little bit. Okay, so there I am. D for the top head. And then the bottom head. Turn this down a little bit. Let's see. Let's get it so we can hear this better. That sounds like it actually went a little bit flat with me banging on it. And you know, this is actually an ambassador on the bottom. And snare, you know, bottom snare heads are already way, way, way thinner, because they're designed more for activating the snares, so you get that snare sound. They're not as much about an interaction to create a pitch. They're just really, really thin, so it's super sensitive, and the snares will be activated. Okay, we're getting closer. Okay, so then this whole thing should end up a G. Yeah, so the fundamental tone is a G. So we have our D there, our A there, and our G there. So then turn on the snares. I'm playing rim shots right now. Okay, so here's some other really important aspects of how I treat snare drums. One thing that I discovered early on was that there's this real sweet spot for the snare tension, and it's easy to miss because it's actually past the point where the drum kind of gets choked off. So check this out. This is the tensioning adjustment here. Okay, we go all the way down. Okay, there we go. So I'm way down. Yeah, everything on this drum doesn't work particularly great. It just sounds great. So that's super, super loose. So there's a point right around there where it's like you're getting a good, consistent, raspy sound. It's not too flappy, and the drum is still sounds pretty open. It's not getting choked off. But the snares are quite loose, and everything in the room will make them sizzle, you know? And so I discovered at a certain point there's a point where it starts getting kind of choked off, and if you go past that, so there it is choked off. It starts to open up again, and you get this really cool gated sound on the drum without a gate. So check this out. You hear that? It's because the tension of the snares is now resonating with the pitch of the drum. That's what's happening there. So you have more tension on the snares. They're less reactive to all the other sounds in the room, so they're not just buzzing away all the time. And you get that cool gated snare sound without having a gate on it. So here it is again. Go down. So there it is loose. You know, it sounds pretty good right there. Gets really choked off and shitty sounding there. And then it opens up again. You hear the body of the sound again with this more gated quality to it. So that's usually how I set the snare tension on the snare drum. I really like that focused, just like explosion of sound that just goes, you know, it impacts and then goes away, and it's not just like fizzing away all the time. So then here's the other thing that I almost always do with snare drums. This is just a little piece of a leather guitar strap. I just cut a section of it out. And what I end up doing is putting this on the drum, and I just kind of rest it on there. And it enhances that sort of gated quality. So it's not just ringing away endlessly, right? So you get that impact. And what I like is, if you can see this, when I hit the drum, the leather pad actually lifts off the drum for a second. So you hear the drum totally wide open when you hit it, and then it falls back down and dampens all of the sort of extraneous ringing. And so I'll tape this thing down on the edge of the rim like this so it can pivot. It's a flap that'll be able to pivot on top of there. And you can see it. It jumps off the drum for a second while I hit it. So the drum isn't, I'm not going to tape this down to the head because it totally changes the sound of the drum at that point. You lose a lot of the cool overtones when the drum is actually being hit. When the impact happens, I want to have those overtones. I just don't want to have them ringing endlessly. So this is like, again, a little gate. So this drum now sounds kind of gated by itself. There's no gate on it. So it went from that kind of a vibe to sounding more gated there. That's a little too aggressive there. Let's back it off a little bit. Now sounding even more gated. Gated snare drum without having to use a gate. So that's typically how I dress the drum. It works great with rim shots, center hits. Let's try it with yeah, I like that. So there you go. So that's snare drum. We'll take a look at the kick drum, and I wish I had the same level of sort of quantification that I've gotten together with the snare drum and the floor tom and the rack tom and stuff. I really tried to do that with the kick drum, and it's all too low, and there's too many overtones, and it's just kind of a mess. And so I couldn't pin anything down that was really particularly meaningful. So here, I'm gonna just re-aim this camera, and I'll just show you what's going on with this drum. Okay, so it's the same kind of thing where the resonant head is higher than the batter head. And I don't have exact pitches that I can offer you. The way I approach it, it's the same kind of thing. I would put the heads on the same way, try and put tension in the center, and even out the pitches of the lugs, and then just get it to a place where it sounds cool. And so depending on the song, how deep you want it, or if you want an actual tone, I typically am not trying to get an identifiable pitch out of the kick drum. I want it to be a powerful, punchy sound that's just these bursts of low end, but it's not actually playing a note that's going to interfere with the bass guitar. And so I usually tune the kick drums low enough where there's not a real obvious pitch there. So there it is. It's, coated ambassador heads on both sides of the drum. I've had a couple things come up where in comments, people talking about this sort of like airy quality on the drums. It's definitely using these really open, coated ambassadors, thinner heads. I'm not into any of these like crazy power stroke fucking things where they're trying to kill all of those overtones. The overtones is what gives you that air on the kick drum sound. Once it starts getting compressed or distorted in a cool way, all those overtones start to come out, and it's what gives the drum a lot of character and something that your ear can grab onto, other than just a really low pitch with a click sound attached to it. That's the opposite of what I'm going to. I want to hear the drum have this boom to it in the room, so you hear it the way it sounds when you're actually playing the drum kit. So that's as much as I got for you on the kick drum. That's how I approach it. I wish I had something that was more, quantifiable or concrete than that, but that's basically it. So we'll hear how that translates in the couple of microphones that we have going on. So probably the next thing is going to be, let me get over to a camera where people can see me again. And so the next thing is going to be record something, so we can hear all this put together. So let me get set up for that, and we'll hear this get recorded. All right. Okay, so I put the drum kit back together, and we're going to be able to record. I've got this Beyer 160, M160. This is an original one from the 60s, I guess, or something like that. It's an old one, silver body one. And then way back in the corner, I'll be able to show this in a second, there's a mic. It's a U47 tube mic that's probably about 10 feet away from the kick drum. I'm using that for the low end of the kick drum. That's actually gated just to come on, just to add this boomy punch to the kick drum. This is getting just a even helping of the toms and stuff. I've been really digging this position. I put the cymbals over here so the cymbals stay away from that mic a little bit more. And I like to just put it right in between the two toms, so you get an equal helping of the two toms, the snare drum, you get the attack of the kick, and then I use the other microphone to get the low end of the kick drum. And I've been doing this like one mic thing where if this microphone is getting enough low end of the kick drum, I can just duplicate it, filter it, so it's just low end, and then delay it, and I get a very similar effect. It's a little drier, it's not as roomy sounding, but for this, it makes more sense. This big bombastic drum, so it makes more sense to just put the mic further away so I get that cool delay and get that effect of the drum impacting and going down in pitch, because more of the low frequencies are being represented by the mic that's further away. It's just, it's a thing that I used to do all the time. I just liked the way it sounded when the mic was further away, and then more recently realized that there's something important about that for me. And so even if I don't have a mic that's across the room, I'll take a signal and just delay it, for the real low end part of the kick drum. So here we go. I'm just going to play a little bit to this thing. I think for now you'll probably just hear it through my lav mic. I just realized I listened to what I was doing. The tuning the toms was a bit distorted through my lav mic. Apologies on that. But I turned my lav mic down. I'll turn up my voice, and then hopefully the drums are not going to be totally distorted here. All right, we'll see what we get. Okay, so recorded stuff into the computer. I did some processing on it, tried to blend this thing a little bit, so hopefully we can have our wow, that sounds cool moment. Let's hear what we got, and then I'm gonna go through what got done to it with the processing and stuff, and we can I'm gonna highlight how the pitches sort of interact with what's going on around it. So here's where I ended up with this thing. Check it out. So you get the idea there, and so the drum sound it's just the two mics. We have the the 160 that's really capturing the whole kit, not really getting a lot of low end. So let me show you where we started with these things. I'm going to mute all of the kind of processed versions here. So this is just the 160. No EQ, no nothing going on. And, I like that it's very balanced. You can hear a good balance of the snare, the hi-hat, the toms. The toms are very balanced in there. The main thing that's missing in it is just the kick drum has no oomph, no weight behind it at all. That's why it was necessary to have the other microphone. And it's probably important to emphasize that the drums are played a particular way in order to try and make this work. I play a heavy kick, heavy snare, light on the cymbals. When you see the video of me playing the crash cymbal, I don't bash the crash cymbal. It's just, I just touch it, and go easy on the hi-hat as much as I can. Sometimes I get a little excited and it gets a little loud. You can hear me get excited before the anticipating drum fills, and the hi-hat gets louder and stuff. But that's the basic idea, heavy foot, slightly less on the snare drum, and then just light on the cymbals. And you'll do a lot better trying to capture something with minimal mics like that. And there's things about the minimal miking thing that is kind of a pain in the ass, but it's the only way to get things to sound like that, I guess. And it's a sound that I really like. As soon as I start trying to blend in, close mics, the the character of the sound just starts to fall apart for me. You blend in those really close, sort of claustrophobic sounds, you lose the air and the punch and all the things that are sort of interesting about the sound start to go away. And so it takes a little bit of extra fussing around to get this, but then again, you're not, trying to address 8 microphones or something and EQ and process all of those microphones. You only have 2 things to deal with, so maybe it all comes out the same in the end. But this is basically what I did. So on this guy, I put a little bit of a gate on here. Let me pull this down so everybody can see this. Not a lot. It's just like 4 dB, and this is really just to turn down the hi-hat a little bit to compensate for all the compression that got added to it. And so a little bit of a very just gentle gate on there. Nothing too fancy going on. A little bit of look ahead, all that kind of stuff. And then this is a hardware insert, and this has the J37 tape machine. In fact, I'm going to get that going so we can hear that. There's a J37 tape machine. There's an Unfair Child. Let me make sure I'm remembering everything here. So, yeah, Unfair Child. And then this EQ. Let me see if I can pull that up. So there's the Unfair Child, and I have this new Unfair Child accessory that allows me to blend between feed forward, feed back, all that kind of stuff. I'm definitely doing it on this. I might be able to show some of the settings on there. And then this little Langevin EQ on there. And it's just boosting, it looks like 8 dB of 5K. A pretty aggressive move there. So that's the processing that's going on there. The tape machine's rolling now, so let's hear all of this stuff. What we have so far. So there it is with that. So I'll bypass the Unfair Child. That's without the Unfair Child. Although we're hearing other compression right now. Let me bypass all of the compression. Where is all of that? That's all right here. Okay. Bam. There we go. So that's the tape machine. The tape machine with this 5K EQ. And that's without the EQ. There it is with the EQ. Pretty darn wonderful. These old Langevin inductor EQs are pretty incredible, man. It's a lot of cool, vibey, high end that you can add to things with those guys. And then here we go again with the Unfair Child. And so I'm in variable 2 right here, just adding a little bit of extra time to the attack to let a little more transient through. The release time is 7. And then I've got this guy going on, and really all it's doing is doing this blend of feedback to feed forward. And so right now, it's more towards the feedback signal. So anything counterclockwise of 12 o'clock is more feedback. As soon as you start going past 12 o'clock, then it's more feed forward. So here, let's check this out. I'll play with that a little bit. So that's fully feedback. That's where I was. That's fully feed forward. And so, you know, you can hear how grabby the feed forward thing gets. It can be really cool. I maybe should have gone a little more of that. We'll leave it where it was. And then the only other thing I did is I just blended right here, the wet signal, I blended in just the tiniest bit of dry. That's fully wet. And just one click back gives me a little bit of dry signal in there. So it doesn't get pinched, you know, grabbed too hard there. So that's what the Unfairchild is doing, the little Langevin EQ. And then I had some stuff going on here, but that we'll check that out because I refined it once I actually committed all of that stuff. So what ended up happening is I committed the tape machine and the Fairchild because there's some stuff that I needed to do that I needed to be in sync with, and the tape machine, you know, creates this delay that made it impossible to do that. So I wasn't able to do that in real time. So I committed all of that stuff right here. Let's see. Right here, committed it right there. I'm gonna get used to this OBS thing. It's gonna take a second. It's just another thing for my brain to try and manage while I'm talking about this. Okay, I'll get it together. So what's going on here is I've got this multiband guy, and it's doing this thing that I've really gotten into lately, where I'm basically just trying to get rid of harsh transients on things, and so it's set as fast on the attack and release as possible. I'm adding high end, but it's compressing that range, so it kind of makes everything sound a little bit brighter and airier, but the attacks don't get too pokey, you know? So it's a little bit on the snare. It was really more for the kick drum. So that's without it. That's with it. And it's, you know, it's one of those things that I'm always looking for, something that makes the signal sound brighter, but also less harsh. Tape machines do that for me. This trick does that for me. I'm sure, you know, I'm probably the last person to the party with this trick. Everybody's probably been doing this, but I recently have started to really get into this. It's amazing on acoustic guitar, man. I'll never not do this on acoustic guitar now. So there's that thing. There it is without. There it is with. And one of the other things that it does for me is it allows me to compress the signal harder. So you know, I can clamp down on the signal harder with a compressor and get that more intense compressed sound without it getting too pinched and pokey sounding. So then there's no EQ other than an automated thing for the floor tom. I just wanted to add a little more oomph to the floor tom. So you can see what happens there. It's not a huge amount. Let's see. How much is this? Yeah, 6 dB. But maybe that is a huge amount. I don't know. Yeah, it just helps the floor tom sound a little fuller. But that's it. Nothing else going on with the EQ. So really, on this microphone, it's basically flat, except for that big 8 dB 5K boost from the Langevin inductor EQ. Okay, and so then I have this guy on here, and so this is being keyed from, I isolated the kick drum hits, and I just wanted the kick drum to sound more compressed in the context of this whole thing. And so these trigger compression just on the kick drum. You can see what's happening with this. Yeah, there it goes. And that was really because when I started compressing everything, the snare drum was getting compressed a lot more than the kick drum. And so the snare drum had this really cool, solid, compressed, quality to it, and the kick drum was just kind of like jumping out too much. Doesn't usually happen, but for some reason it did on this. So this was just kind of trying to balance all of that out. So there's that. And then there's this guy. And so I made this just low end. Okay, so you can hear what's going on here. So there's a gate on here. That's what the mic sounded like. This is the U47 that's all the way in the corner. Let me see if you can you see that? Let's see. Yeah, you can. So there it is, all the way in the corner there. And this is what it sounds like. I gated it. Pretty easy to do. I just filtered off the high frequencies, and it pretty much mostly just opens for the kick drum. It's okay if it opens a little bit for the toms and stuff. I just didn't want to have it open on the snare drum every time. Yeah, there's little bits leaking through, but they didn't really bother anything. And then a very extreme roll-off. So, I'm boosting a little bit at 48 just to add some cool subby stuff. Really extreme low-pass filter here. So this is 48 dB per octave low-pass filter. And then I'm pulling out some of this like 143 hertz just to deepen it a little bit, not be so cloudy with this sort of low-mid stuff. So here they are, the two together. And so I added, and this one, the U47, I should mention, this guy went through the tape machine as well, but I really didn't do anything. I didn't like push the level too hard. You can hear the distortion that's added on this one. I really mashed that through the tape machine pretty good. But this one, I needed the dynamics on it, and I wanted it to be punchier. So it just went through the tape machine, and there was really nothing else going on the way there, because I left the gate and all this other stuff off when I committed it. So I only committed the tape machine on it, so it would just be in sync with the M160 signal. And then I added this guy, my trusty SRE 501 here. So that's this dude down here. You can see him doing his thing. Let's see. Yeah, so there's and it's blended right about there. It's got the little sort of when the levee breaks delay on there. Okay, so then all of that stuff ended up getting compressed with some stuff over here, and the whole mix got compressed. So it was blended in with this synth bass thing. So I have the blend of the drums and the bass and stuff. It's going to this API 2500 first, to just have a little more modern kind of just hard-hitting compression in there. And then after that, it goes to these old Altec compressors to have a little bit of a vintage quality to it as well. And so I would say the 2500 is doing more of the heavy lifting on this if I bypass it. Oh, we're not hearing it at all yet. Okay, let me patch it in. Yeah, so this is the last thing, and then it goes here. We'll patch this in. Okay. Okay, so there it is with these two compressors. That's without the 2500. That's with it. And let me see if there's an easy way I can patch around. The Altecs don't have a bypass on them. That's just the 2500. And then this is the combination of the two. So there it is. So when we get back to the drum tuning, this is what I like about it. So like this opening drum fill, and it's kind of subtle, but once you really tune into it, you can really hear what's going on here. So this drum fill. So here's my little reference guy. Tone. And so what ends up happening is the snare drum was resonating, the low note was at a G, but there's a D in there. There's actually also, you can you can hear, I think there's like a G sharp in there somewhere as well. I hear that floating around in there, which in this particular instance is probably fine. But the drum fills play like a little melody. It goes. And then every time the fill plays, you hear that. And, you know, it's in key with the song. Instead of having these sort of random arbitrary notes being thrown into the song with the toms. So that's really, for me, is part of the benefit of doing that. So, you know, that's basically the whole deal. You have stuff ringing in tune. The snare drum has that sort of really isolated. It almost sounds like a sample. I know a lot of times I've been accused of using samples even when I don't. And because of like the snare tensioning trick and using that little flap on the snare drum has this like pop sound where it's just this like explosion of sound that comes and goes. And I don't really have to gate for the snare drum. I couldn't anyways, because it would sort of mess everything up. So gating just to sort of change the relationship of the volume between the hi-hat and the kick and snare. So, and so you get that quality. It keeps everything, you know, if things are kind of too just ringy and open, you lose that punch, those impacts that just jump out at you in between the ambience of the drums. And so, you know, the snare drum, you could hear all the cool overtones of the snare drum because I wasn't trying to contain the decay of it by taping things to the head. There's a flap that opens up and lets the drum be completely open for the moment where the sound is the loudest. And then it falls back down and dampens the long decay. So you don't have this really, really long ringing thing. You have this just compact, sort of punchy, aggressive sound with all of the cool overtones of the drum. The kick drum, like I talked about, it's not tuned to a specific pitch. It's just designed to be low and punchy, just feel satisfying. And and just interact in a way with the synth bass that's going to sound cool. So that's basically it. I'm running out of things to say, so I think I'm done. I'm not really sure what else to say about this. This is this version that is more closer to what I've been doing here in Topanga. I will probably do another one of these, which is like the crazy, extravagant 16 microphones all over the place thing that is more indicative of what was happening for, like I mentioned, Third Eye Blind, Good Charlotte, Taking Back Sunday, All American Rejects, all of that kind of stuff. And then there's a whole other thing, which is like the Queens of the Stone Age, Death from Above. It was a little bit, this approach was on Lost Prophets. So that's its own thing. So, when I can get back into Barefoot and do that at some point, I'll probably do another one of these that sort of highlights that whole approach as well. So there you have it. That's how I like to try and tune drums and dress them and make them sound kind of Bonham-y and whatever. So I hope that's helpful. I'll see you next time. All right, bye.
You put the whoosy on the whatsy, attach the whatsy to the whoosy, connect the thingamajig to the thingamabob, and that'll make the whatchamacallit go. You hook the gidget to the gadget, adjust the gadget to the gidget, unhook the dingley-dang from the diddly-doo.